Here we are live now.
Wonderful. And Maxwell, is it possible to? Okay.
Okay, so probably let me do a bit of intro. Everybody, you are welcome to this session. In fact, we are really privileged to have Michael Adontin, who is now connecting from UK, but is a Ghanaian. Don't focus so much on the the Irish rich that you will hear is he's a Ghanaian, so he can understand our system and what we are going through. And he's in Ghana also often, so understand our market. He's going to help us with the go-to market sales strategy. If you did not attend the first session we had with him or have not watched the YouTube video, you need to. But today he's going to actually expand on that and have a practical session with us to help each of us to develop a strategy that will help us increase our sales, maximize whatever margins that we'll be able to make, and be able to, one of the most important things is not just to make sales and lose customers. How do we keep them and add on to them? So, Michael, it's a great pleasure to introduce you to our audience, and so I'll leave the stage entirely to you.
Gideon, thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning to the Hyperspace crew. It's a pleasure to come back. Of course, I had a wonderful session a couple of weeks back with the team. As Gideon mentioned, yes, I'm full Ghanaian. Both parents are Ghanaian. I lived in Ghana from age of 3 to when I was 17. I went to St. Augustine's College. I did all the primary school, so I know Ghana really well. I came back to England when I was 17, and I've been here ever since. I do go back quite often, and I kind of know the terrain in Ghana, especially. I have a couple of businesses that are in Ghana, and I've got a few business partners that I work with in Ghana, and I'm constantly making sure that I don't lose touch with all the kind of business activities that takes place in Ghana. So yes, I hope you guys would enjoy the session today. I want to keep today's session interactive, so I'll run through the agenda very shortly, but I don't want to bore everybody with the depth of PowerPoint. The objective of today is really to take it that step further in terms of how do you build your sales go-to-market strategy. It does not have to be an afterthought. It has to be something which is thought of from the start of when you're building your business plan. So you're going to see from today the art and the science of selling. You're going to walk away with some practical tools and some practical steps, and there's going to be some advice that will be shared along the way. Again, to make it interactive, I'm open for you to challenge, ask questions, because that's the only way that we can both learn, right? Iron sharpens iron. So I'm not here to say I'm the expert on all things sales, but I'm here to share what I know. And of course, I'm willing to also learn if anybody has anything to contribute. So let me now run through the agenda in terms of what we're going to be covering today. But one of the things I also wanted to point out was we do know a third of small businesses do fail in the first 2 years, and about 50% of those within 5 years, and a third of within 10 years and further. The key is making sure that you have a blueprint to growth. And when I talk about growth, I talk about growth from a personal standpoint. So growing yourself, growing your employees and your staff members, and also growing your business. So growth from all aspects is kind of what I talk about when I talk about growth. So let me share my screen, and please let me know if you can see my screen. I may have to switch it around, but let's see. Okay, so slideshow from beginning.
Yeah, we can see now.
Can you see the one without any notes or the notes tab?
Yeah, Africa Sales Academy. Yeah, now
Okay.
you're, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. In case anybody's wondering what this is one of the companies which we set up with headquarters in Ghana. Effectively, the reason we set up this academy is because we feel that sales is such a wonderful profession for a lot of our young people in Ghana and a lot of our businesses in Ghana as well. And sales is not just picking up the phone and trying to sell something to somebody. Sales is effectively making sure that you work on yourself before you're able to go out and sell something to somebody. But it's also win-win. So when I talk about, selling with EQ, EQ is the emotional intelligence. So as a salesperson, what we focus on within the academy is making sure that every learner that we support is in touch with the emotional intelligence. What do I mean by that? Your self-awareness, right? Your social awareness. These are skills that has to be cultivated. And once you're in tune with your EQ, sales becomes, natural for you. So we very much focus on EQ. But of course, there are a number of other things that we talk about. From an agenda perspective, I know many of you have got excellent business plans. I had the opportunity to speak with one of the businesses after my last session on Hyperspace. I think it was a Ask Me Anything session on the CEO. And yeah, I spoke to one of the businesses, wonderful business, very, very excellent business plan. And we talked about a few areas that I can support them. The goal of today is really not to get you to rewrite your business plan. Far from that. The goal of today is to make sure that we hone in on the sales go-to-market. How can you build a sales plan, and how can you make sure that you have the right ecosystem to support you to grow? That is the goal of today. Of course, I talked about some of the practical skills. So the first part, there's going to be 4 parts. The first part would be run you through a methodology that has worked for the likes of Salesforce and many other businesses beyond Salesforce's inception. There'll be a survey or a poll for about 10 minutes. So that'll be a little bit of a break. And then there's going to be part 2, where I talk about the buyer and the sales process. Again, I'll keep it to 30 minutes and try and make it interactive. Then there's going to be a group activity for about 20 minutes to get you guys to and ladies to put into practice what we're going to be covering, or some of the stuff that we're going to be covering. And then there'll be a summary and Q&A. We have 2 hours set for this. It could be shorter than 2 hours, and therefore we can give you some time back. All depends on how things go throughout the process. So I'm going to begin and we'll kickstart. There's going to be a lot of information that you're going to be taking on board today. And I appreciate that not everything is going to be able to be memorized, or you can't recall everything. But remember that from a learning perspective, you go through a 4-stage process, right? And this is something that was, I think, originally devised by the army. And this is how the army puts some of their troops through from a learning perspective. If you take the top left, unconscious incompetence, many of you would probably hear or see certain things for the first time, but that's fine, right? From a learning perspective, you may be in that unconscious incompetence. It doesn't mean that you are totally oblivious or you're not clever. It just means that you've just never encountered it. So you be in that box. Over time, you're going to then move to conscious incompetence. So this is where you have that realization that actually, perhaps this area of sales is something that I don't know. I actually need to know, and I need to maybe investigate and do more about that. So so you kind of move through that stage, and then you move on to conscious competence. So the conscious competence is whereby you're conscious that you're competent. You're able to use the skill that you've just learned, right? And obviously try and move on to the final stage, which is the unconscious competence stage. That is where you can kind of do things in your sleep, some people may call it, or effectively, you can pretty much draft your sales plan or your sales go-to-market plan with very, very minimal effort. If you think about, putting this into perspective, if you're somebody who, who's able to drive a car or a bicycle or a motorbike, the unconscious incompetence is whereby you're totally unaware of, driving skills or even motorbiking skills, right? And if I can use myself as an example, I can't ride a motorbike. And I think, the first time I realized was when I kind of had to sit on it and I tried to move it and I almost fell off it. I was totally incompetent. Then I got to the point where I was like, okay, cool. I actually do not have the capacity to be able to ride this motorbike, right? I became conscious of that fact. And then I moved on to the fact that, okay, if I want to learn, then I can learn. But I never really passed that stage. So I'm still in the yellow column where I cannot ride a bike, but I'm conscious that I can't ride a bike, a motorbike, shall I say. But you get the concept. Where I'd like all of you to get to is to get to the blue box, whereby you can draft your sales go-to-market plan for any business that you're in, whether it's a technology business, whether it's agriculture business, whether it's trade, whether it's retail. It does not matter what business that you're in. Use the concept and use the blueprint and build a foundation. So that is what I wanted to cover on here. So now let's actually go into the kind of the meat and bone for today. So a sales go-to-market plan. What is it? If you ask me what a sales go-to-market plan is, it's effectively you being able to, build your sales plan, but making sure that you involved everybody that's connected to helping you support the growth. So somebody in marketing, somebody in, maybe if you're in a technology business, implementation or professional services, somebody in, a lawyer, anybody that helps you execute your sales of your services or your product is part of your sales go-to-market plan. And you need to make sure that you build a plan that everybody knows what their responsibilities are, but ultimately with a goal of helping you meet your vision. So that is what a sales go-to-market plan is about. Okay. So one concept which I'd love for everybody to apply to their businesses is something called V2MOM. Some of you may have heard it. Some of you, it's probably the first time you've come across this acronym. And I'll give you some backstory to this. The V2MOM stands for the first V, look at it as VVMOM. So they've just kind of shortened it and made it V2MOM, 2 V's and MOM. The first V stands for your vision, right? You all have visions for your businesses. That is the first V. The second V stands for your values. And we'll talk more about your values. It's imperative that as a business you have your values. And I'll give you an example of when this has been applied in other businesses. Then the first M stands for your methods. So yes, you've got your vision, you've got your values, but how are you going to execute? The M is the execution. And today's session, we're going to focus more around the M, which is the methods. The O is your obstacles, right? What are the things standing in your way for you to complete your vision or to meet and exceed your vision? That is the obstacles. Again, we'll talk more about that, very, very shortly. And then the final M is your measures. You need to understand that you've got to measure at, incremental, on an incremental basis, whether it's quarterly, whether it's yearly, whether it's half yearly, whether it's bi-weekly. You need to be able to measure your progress, because without measuring your progress, you just don't know how long it's going to take you to get to realize your vision. So making room for measuring your progress is very, very important. But let me give you some backstory to this. Salesforce, the world leader in CRM, the founder, Mark Benioff, is the one who invented V2MOM. since he invented V2MOM back in 1999, it has been used many, many times by many, many businesses who are now leaders in this space. Mark Benioff wrote this on the back of, I think, his American Express envelope. And it's something which, at first it was quite gimmicky, when he wrote the V2MOM. And he was on holiday in Hawaii and he was about to set up Salesforce. And he's like, how do I build a living and breathing document that would ensure that it pushes the growth and it gives the momentum across the business, and to give the employees empowerment. So he invented V2MOM. His co-founder, a chap called Parker Harris, kind of laughed at this and said, what is this about? But Parker Harris actually kept a copy of this V2MOM that Mark created, and when they IPO'd, right, several years after, Parker Harris actually gave him the original V2MOM that he wrote, and he was totally shocked. Mark was totally shocked to say, how did you keep this away from me all these years? Now, what is V2MOM? V2MOM is a framework that allows you to effectively power your way to run your business. It allows you to define your goals and organize it in more of a principled way to execute them. And it takes into consideration your constant drive to evolve. If you think about the current economic climate, having kind of, gone through, COVID-19, going through all these, potential recession from what we're hearing, as a business, you need to be able to evolve. You cannot stand still. And what this allows you to do, this methodology allows you to do, it allows you to kind of keep up with the pace and keep up with the times, and it's constantly evolving. So we're going to go into V2MOM in more detail very shortly. But before I do that, can I just pause there and ask if there are any questions so far, please? Okay, so silence is always golden. So I'm going to move on from there. But I'll give you a story. I worked at Salesforce back in 2015. When I joined Salesforce, the first thing I was asked to do is for me to write my V2MOM. I said, what is that? They explained to me what V2MOM is. I knew what the CEO, Mark Benioff's V2MOM was, because it's on the website, it's in all our internal collateral. I knew what my regional director's V2MOM is. Someone just drawn something on the screen. I don't know what that is. Apologies if you guys are seeing something. It's not me. And yeah, I knew what my regional director's V2MOM is, and I knew what my V2MOM had to be. When I sketched my V2MOM had to align to my boss's one, and my boss's one to his bosses, and so on and so forth. What that created, it created a chain, and it made me feel part of something. When I'm waking up thinking, why am I going to work? I think about what I'm doing is part of a bigger goal, and it's impacting the world. So it made me feel empowered, and it made me feel like I'm part of something. I think we're having an intruder here. Can you guys see what I'm seeing on the screen?
I think someone has activated their annotates, so it needs to be disabled.
Right. It says John Stewart or something, whoever John Stewart is. So, okay, we'll carry on. So we talked about the V2MOM. Let's look at the first V.
Heard you watch JoJo's.
Can I carry on? Again, I think there's a.
Please
okay.
Keep on.
Okay. So let's look at the first V, which is the vision. The vision is effectively what you want to accomplish, in your sales go-to-market strategy. And let me be very specific here. You may have the vision for your business, overarching vision for the business. But the vision that I'm trying to encourage you to write down is the vision for your sales go-to-market strategy, right? So it could be a case of, I want to achieve 100,000 cities in the next 3 years. That could be a vision. It could be a vision about, you know, the growth of the business without giving it a number. I'm always somebody who believes in making things very, very specific. So if it's a revenue number, be very specific on that revenue number. If it's growth of your team, of your staff, also make it very, very specific. I want to make sure that 10 of my members of staff are enabled on, you know, sales or whatever it may be, right? Make it very, very clear. You need to consider things such as, you know, make it more inspiring, more fun, more creative, and how would it impact your community, and how will it impact, you know, the world as a whole. I believe that, you know, when you're setting a vision, it doesn't have to be just about you. It has to be about the bigger environment and the world out there. So let's have a look at Salesforce's vision. This was Mark Benioff's original vision. I think it still stands up to today. Everything sales feeds into this, right? So this is the overarching vision. So we believe, this is Salesforce, this is Mark Benioff, we believe that the business of business is to improve the state of the world and to work to make sure that Salesforce is a platform for change through serving the interests of all our stakeholders, employees, customers, partners, communities, and the environment. This is a very bold vision from Mark, but this was written back in 1999. Has he achieved it? He probably has surpassed it. Salesforce are a multi-billion-dollar organization right now. Yes, they've been going for a very long time, but the vision is what's constantly driving the innovation and the growth. Again, when I was at Salesforce, everything we were doing was making sure that it aligned to the vision. And I'm encouraging you as business owners to also have a bold vision and make sure that everything you're doing will kind of feed into that vision. So the next V is what we call the values. So the values are things which would hold you accountable, right? So to be able to achieve your vision, you've got to have some values. I worked at a company called Rackspace, again, many, many years ago. I remember the values to this day, because those values it was embedded in us. You know, you came into work every day, you weren't questioned about the values, but you expected to know the values, because when customers come in to see you, the business expect you to live those values. Some of those values are, you know, again, to this day, were responsiveness, ownership, resourcefulness, expertise, transparency. It's ingrained in my mind to this day that I remember those values, and we had to live them. So my ask of you is to, once you have your vision, what are the values that would help you achieve your vision? And it could be statements, it could be words, it could be phrases, but make sure that you have these values that would hold you accountable. As you can see there, some of the guidelines are, you know, thinking about what's important to you about this goal, what are the values that support your vision. After you make them, list them in order of importance. It's very important. Let me give you another example. When I was at Rackspace, you know, back, I think I started in 2010, you know, as a up and coming, you know, B2B sales exec. I'd been in sales 10 years before that, but I went into this organization thinking I can learn a lot from this place because of the values and the vision and the mission of the organization. I remember a couple of years in, I found myself where I was in a contentious situation. You know, I was working in one team, another, you know, colleague of mine was working in a different team. We had different leaders, and there was a situation where there was a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest was about a particular opportunity or a deal that I was working on, and somehow, you know, I shouldn't have been working on it, and I'd already invested time and effort and energy into that opportunity, and my colleague was supposed to be working on it. Anyway, it came to the point where I wasn't willing to let go because I put in hours into this opportunity. So I remember vividly, we got called into a meeting to try and resolve the situation. And in the meeting, it was like a 30-minute meeting. The meeting was done in 5 minutes. Why? Because the leader sat us down. So it was myself and two of the leaders. So myself and the one leader and a colleague who was obviously saying that he should be working on the opportunity. And it was really a case of, Mike, one of the values that, as a company or as a team, we believed in was something called CTI, company, team, individual. Company comes first, irrespective of who you are. Everything has to improve the company or for the betterment of the company. Team comes next. The team is important after the company. And then finally, it was the individual. Basically, I came last. I shouldn't have taken it personal. It was them saying, we're doing these for our stakeholders, for our customers, and for the organization. So that conversation was, Mike, based on the events that have taken place with this opportunity, we believe the best thing for the company is for you to hand it over to this colleague because of the values that we stand for. It was end off. There was no kind of argument or no way for me to kind of contest that. And again, I believed in that because I believed in the values. So I'll encourage you as business owners to all have values. It's imperative. So far, we're going to get into the meats and bones very shortly. But so far, we've looked at vision. We've looked at your values. So those are the V2 or 2 Vs. Now let's look at the methods. So when I think about methods, 3 things comes to mind, okay? People, process, and systems. And a lot of the things that will take place would be kind of underneath these three pillars. This would help you. So if we're bringing it down to the sales go-to-market to be very, very specific. Some of the things I think that needs to go into your sales go-to-market framework or your plan are as follows. The people. You can only grow and you can only go as far as your people allow you to. It doesn't matter how amazing your service, your product is. If you don't have the right people with the right mindset, you're not going to be able to grow. Because guess what? The sales function in any business is integral. They are the engine of the business. And when I consult with businesses, when I've worked in the past for businesses, salespeople are the ones that gets the most pressure. Yeah, leaders get pressure, but salespeople get a lot of pressure because without them, the company isn't growing. But salespeople do not work as an entity on their own. They have a big support team around them. And you see very shortly in one of my slides, an example of the ecosystem around a salesperson. So you need to make sure the people that you're bringing in are people who are in touch with the emotional intelligence. And even if they're not in touch with it, make sure that they are of good character. We can all tell from a person of good character when we see one, right? Somebody who has a growth mindset, somebody who is willing to take on board criticism and be able to act on that. You don't want somebody who has a fixed mindset, because fixed mindset could potentially help you derail your growth. For me, one of the things that's, it's non-negotiable is when leaders or CEOs or business owners and founders do not know about who their employees are. They don't find the time to connect with their employees. What do I mean by that? What I mean is find out their why, whether they're in sales, marketing, support, out on the field. Find out, it takes 30 minutes. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why is it so important to them? Why do they get up every morning, every evening, every day to come and work for you? What is their why? Why do they exist? It's amazing how that goes a long way with building relationships and building that emotional connection between you and your members of staff. So find out their why. And if you haven't done it, I implore you to do that. Because for me, when I was working as an employee, the managers that I wanted to work for and the leaders that I wanted to work for were the ones who spent time really trying to understand what makes me tick. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I'll give you an example. 3 years ago, I was working at a company. My wife and I were going through some challenges. It wasn't marital challenges, just generally let's call it challenges. And I just started at this in this organization. And I remember, when that event happened, I told my boss at the time, my VP. He kind of took it, didn't really say much about it. A couple of months carried on. Somewhat that affected my performance, because guess what? When you're stressed and you don't have a clear mind, things do happen. Not at any given point did this individual, or my VP at the time, check in and say, hey, Mike, that situation that you talked about, how are you doing? How's your wife doing? None. It was all about what number are you gonna, what revenue are you gonna bring in this quarter, this month. It was all about numbers. How did that make me feel? Not fantastic. And guess what? I ended up leaving the organization. Again, I worked for another boss who was arms open. He was strict when he had to be strict, but he wanted to understand my why. Mike, so why do you even do what you do? Why are you in sales? Why do you love empowering people? Why do you like mentoring? Why do you like coaching, Mike? How did that make me feel? When Summer was here, he opens up his home to all his staff. Guys, come in. Let's have a barbecue. How does that make all of us feel? We felt empowered. We felt empowered. We felt we want to work for this person, but even beyond that, we want to be excellent at everything that we're doing because he believes in us. So I am, again, implore you to just spend time with your employees and understand their why. Their stories. Everyone has a story. I just told you my story in literally 30 seconds at the start of this call, right? And what I'm finding when I'm coaching a lot of salespeople and leaders, not everybody knows their stories. Everybody has a story. It's like a thumbprint. All our stories are unique, but not everybody knows their stories. But you need to find time to help them either write their stories or mold their stories. And it doesn't take long. It could take you 30 minutes. Think through your life, think through milestones in your life, and build your story. Because your story is what people buy. We all know, right, that we're going through what we call the greatest resignation. And this is not just in Europe or America, it's globally, right? And the greatest resignation is whereby there's so much talent in the marketplace that a lot of employers, what I'm finding is they are employing people for the character, and they are teaching them for skills. What do I mean by that? Well, in an interview setting, it's not about how many degrees you've got or how many masters you've got or how much experience you have. Yeah, experience is good, but they test you based on your character. How do you rise when things are tough? How do you do certain things when things aren't right? It's about character. Because guess what? When you start in that company, they will give you all the skills that you need to be able to be proficient at your job. So again, what I'm finding is the candidates that are succeeding are the ones that have got their stories right. The ones that really let people know. Because when I walk away from an interview and I've got 5 people that I interviewed, they're all going to kind of sound similar, right? Yeah, I've got 5 years experience. Yeah, I've done this before. Okay, that's all great. But what am I really going to remember? The story. That story that really connected with my emotion is what I'm going to remember. And that's probably what I want to be able to employ. So again, very quickly, I'm going to summarize on the people. Hire people who have got good character, people that have got growth mindset that wants to grow. Understand their stories. If they don't have one, create it, help them build one. Understand why they do what they do. And then finally, establish coaches and mentors. I can't emphasize on this. The emphasis on having coaches and mentors is so vital. As a leader and as a founder, as a CEO, I'm pretty sure you've got somebody who coaches you or somebody who mentors you. the same thing has to apply to your people, whether they're just employees or staff or they're leaders in your organization. They need to make sure they've got coaches and mentors, because why wouldn't you want to learn about somebody who's already traveled the path that you're about to go on and help you avoid potential landmines, but do it in such a way that both parties are learning? It's important for everybody in your business to have a coach and a mentor. So that's the people. Doing for time. Okay. The process. The process is where I'm going to spend a bit of time on in about a few minutes time. So I'll just run through that very quickly. You have to build a blueprint. What do I mean by that? It's going to take you, a significant amount of time to initially build your blueprint. But once that's built, it could be replicated many times. If somebody comes into your organization, they just have to look at the playbook. Oh, this is how, successful people have done it in this organization. Okay, great. Or even if it's just you, okay, this is how I sold. I was able to sell to 10 other customers. Okay, let me fine tune it a little bit and let me tailor it to this organization that I'm talking to. But guess what? The foundation is already there. The blueprint is already there. That's what you're going to focus on, the blueprint. So things like sales methodology, there are so many sales methodologies out there. I don't know whether you guys, you train on methodologies, but you've got like, Miller Hyman, you've got Sandler, you've got force management. These are methodologies that allows you or your salespeople to think how best to engage your customers. And what I've done is I've got, and for another day, we can delve into it. You can contact me privately if you want to explore more about the methodology. You need to build a culture of learning. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is having information that will support your salespeople, any marketing people, or anybody connected to sales. If the right collateral, the right marketing assets, all the assets has to be available, because that allows your salespeople to be knowledgeable and learn about your value proposition and what you're trying to sell to your customers. You got to have realistic targets. I've worked in many companies where the targets just aren't realistic, because usually when I start in an organization, the first thing I do is I'll say, okay, this is my target. That's fine. But how did you arrive at that target? And many times they can't tell me the science behind it. It just, oh, we've always had this target, so we're going to give you the same target. But hold on, what if I've got different buyers in my industry? What if I've got a smaller service obtainable market or service addressable market? What if all these things aren't equal to my colleagues, but yet I've got the same target as them? So I encourage you as founders and as CEOs, if you are looking at giving targets to your sales staff, make it more realistic, and there has to be a science to that. Because once I understand the science to it, guess what? I'm just going to build my business around that science. You've got to have frequent feedback, or ask for frequent feedback. And that's something that you can do in a survey or in a poll. Very, very straightforward. Because guess what? If I feel that I'm being listened to, I feel like I want to give more. I want to tell you more, because I'm the one that's on the field. I'm the one that's talking to these potential customers. And I'm the one that needs to be able to tell you at what point do you need to change your product or change your process. Because if you're at the top as a founder, as a CEO, and you're not doing the selling, you're completely removed. And therefore you need that connection, and that's your salespeople. And then finally, you need to align the ecosystem, right? Your salespeople and everybody else that's supporting your salespeople, you have to make sure there's an alignment. They're talking to each other, they're collaborating with each other, and they're working in cohesion. So we've talked about people, we've talked about process, and now finally, let's talk about the systems. Again, I can't emphasize how important the systems are. I've named some of those systems. Many of you may know some of these systems, but I'm sure many of you have other systems that you're using for your respective businesses. But whatever the business is, make sure you have systems that allow you to be more efficient, because what we're trying to do is to save time. What you don't want to do is to get involved in manual and onerous tasks if it's something that a system can allow you to do. So I've named a few, out there. CRM, probably every business needs a CRM, research tool, marketing, PR, you name it. So this is a summary. When it comes to the methods, these are the 3 pillars that you need to look at. Yes, it's going to take you time to build the ideal go-to-market plan, but you've got to start from somewhere, okay? And again, today we're going to focus on the methodology, and I'll come on to that shortly. So let me summarize where we are so far. I talked about V2 MOM. We looked at the vision. We looked at the values. We looked at the methods just now. And in the methods, there are 3 components. You've got people, process, and systems. Now let's look at the obstacles. Put very simply, obstacles are what's preventing you from being successful. And that's pretty much it. You've got to be very upfront with yourself as a business owner and or as a sales leader, and say, based on the vision that I've set for myself or for the team, what is preventing me from getting there? And just make a list of these things, write them down. It could be challenges, it could be problems, it could be issues, it could be anything. It could be your location, it could be a number of things, but everything that you feel could be a potential impediment to you achieving your vision has to be written down. So that's all about obstacles. And then finally, to complete the V2 MOM, the final M is measures. So measures, you ask yourself the question, how do you know you have it? How do you know you've met your vision? How do you know you're on track to meeting your vision? I've outlined a few areas where I think you can start with, right? It could be measuring your year-on-year revenue. Okay, so last year we did 100,000. This year we've done 110,000. That's 10% year-on-year increase. Okay, that's great. But is that 10% year-on-year increase going to get you to your vision of 50% increase in 3 years? Probably not. So then you've got to recalibrate. What do you need to do? What parts in your go-to-market strategy do you need to fine-tune, like an engine, to ensure that you can get more business or you can grow a little bit more to get to that goal in 3 years? So you got to measure it, right? And you can measure this on a monthly basis. And obviously at the year, you have a cumulative growth forecast. You can measure it by your client retention. How many customers do you have now? How many customers are falling through the funnel? Think of it as a funnel, right? How many are falling through the cracks because of negligence or because of pricing or because of product or because of, it could be a number of reasons, but you need to make sure that you're measuring that, because if you don't measure it, you could be growing top line, but your bottom line could be sifting through, and therefore your growth ambitions is going to be impaired. Your employee retention. I talked about people. People are the gold dust of every organization. You need to make sure that your good people are staying, and you need to look after them. And again, I talked about on 2 slides before, understanding their why, understanding their stories, making sure the targets are realistic. These are all some of the things you can do to make sure that your employees are staying with you, and they're staying with you for a long time. In addition to the profit, the revenue growth, you can measure profit growth, right? It is really, what's pertinent to your business. And then of course, the client retention links to the client satisfaction. So these are some examples of how you can measure. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. We're going to go into a poll, and I'm going to put the link into the chat. Please spend the next 10 minutes to do that, and I'll put the link there very shortly. But can I pause there and ask if you have any questions or any questions for me? And I'm going to stop sharing for now because we're going to spend 10 minutes to do the poll. So please, any questions, I'm open to listening whilst I bring up the poll.
Can I go on? Yeah, go ahead. Dachehene, Emmanuel. Okay, I think it might not come in on. So now I'll move on and ask my questions. I wanted to ask about the methodology, right? When you were talking about methods, because I feel that the methodology actually then influences the kind of system that you need to put in place for your business. So usually in your experience for a small business, which I say 10 employees, what kind of methodology in your experience have you found to be more useful for such a business?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on, I guess, your desire to be able to adopt that kind of methodology. What I found is, as individuals, and I'll come on to as a business owner in a second, every organization that you go and work for, there seems to be a different methodology that they've adopted. So for example, when I've worked for many companies in the past, every company would be using Medic, or would be using Sandler, or using force management. As a salesperson, I had to then think about bringing it all together and making it my own. But as businesses, it's really your choice. I can, make some recommendations, but I think there are one or two mainstream ones out there that I've seen many organizations adopt recently, just because it addresses a number of the challenges that salespeople feel, but most importantly, it ensures that as a salesperson, you understand where you're at in the sales process and where the customer is at in their buying process. Because what sometimes happening is there's a misalignment. As a salesperson, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm at that stage where I'm going to close the deal. The customer is thinking, I haven't even negotiated yet. So we're not aligned. And some of these methodologies ensures that, you're in tune and you're aligned with your customer. So that's generally the methodology that I can think of. The other piece is where we make the distinction is the methodology allows you to, at every given stage, know where you're at. But then if you want to evaluate your opportunity, so let's say, for example, one of your salespeople, you want to have a business review with them. They've got 5 opportunities. You've only got 30 minutes. You need a methodology that would allow you to be able to question them, and therefore you can be able to glean the insights to say, okay, I think this is going to close or that's not going to close. And again, there's a methodology there. And generally, there's one called MEDDIC, right? MEDDIC. If you Google MEDDIC or MEDPIC, it comes up. But MEDDIC allows you as a leader to sit down with your sales team to say, okay, so, why are they doing what they're doing? What's the biggest pain for the customer? Why are they talking to us? How are they going to measure success? Who are you talking to? Do they have a budget? Has it been signed? When do they need this by? What's the compelling event? If they don't do it, what happens? So again, that's a methodology. It allows you to be very, very snappy questions, walk away thinking, okay, I think we should spend time here. Or actually, there's a lot of work to do on this one. It's not going to close in November or October. Go and do more work. Hopefully that helps. The methodology depends on, adopting one and making sure that everybody in the business kind of aligns to that way of selling.
Thank you. That helps. I don't know if there's another person who has a question, but if not, I have a second question.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question though.
Okay, Emmanuel is back now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, sure. Thank you. He was talking about people, like how we are going to align people, and I was asking, like, are you not going to train them, or like, are you not going to explore people when say, oh, we have to scale up or anything like that? So, are you not going to look for people who are going to do the work, or you are going to train people on how they can fit the job? All right. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Dache. So if I understood correctly, from the people perspective, are you saying should they come in already trained, or are you now going to train them? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But they have the skill already. So you were talking about knowing them and asking their why. So if
Yes.
Yeah. So are you not going to, if their why are not enough, but they have the zeal to, move forward, are you not going to train them or like do your checks and error, try and errors with them if it's going to work? Yeah. So that's what I want to say.
Understood. So how I view it, and whenever I speak to leaders, if somebody is of good character, they're willing to be malleable, right? You can mold them, right, into supporting them with their vision and their goals. So if you have somebody that came in to do one role and you understand their why, you understand their vision, you get their story, and you feel that that particular role isn't for them, but it's another role that's right for them, I think naturally, you can lead them and steer them into that role. And them being somebody who has a good character, is of a good growth mindset, will see that you have their best interests at heart, and therefore you're helping them shape their career into what you feel is right for them. So for me, it's probably maybe the latter. You've got to invest into them and you've got to train them, because once you train them and they know that you've invested money and time and energy into them, and if they've got good character, they're going to stay, and they'll stay for a long time. Because if their vision aligns with your company vision or even your personal vision, the alignment is always going to be there. There will never be a disconnect. And hence why I would say, bring in the people who, there are many, there's a lot of talent out there, but not everybody has good character. And you can always sense it, right? Call it discernment, call it instinct, but you can always sense, when somebody's of good character. And if there's a piece about it, I think you need to invest into them.
All right, thank you.
Okay. My question has to do with, the two V's. I think it starts with I'll move on first to talk about value rather than vision.
Yeah.
I see how it's so important that you should have value and vision to drive everything you do as a business, and including sales. I have seen situations where people got into business not because they had a vision, a value, but it's circumstantial. I lost my job, and a friend of mine is interested in business, and he says there's opportunity there, and I get involved in it, and I start a business. How you see, the foundation is not based on any value or any vision. So how then does one develop a value, a vision, then when basically starting something, start a business was really circumstantial and not necessarily that was premeditated and planned?
Yeah. I mean, I guess there are different different points where you can hop on that bus, but ultimately anyone that hops on a particular bus or a car or a train knows there's an end destination. And I believe, you got to start with the end in mind, right? You've got to, yes, you started, through serendipity, you found yourself in a business, but somewhat at some point, if you are looking to build a sustainable business, and again, all we're talking about today, and maybe I should have made that, distinction at the start, is we're talking about businesses that are going to be around to last. We're talking about, businesses that are going to be sustainable. We're talking about businesses that are going to be legacies for our children, our children's children, to hopefully take over, right? Not a business that will be here for 5 years, 10 years, and then it dissipates. So on that note, once you get that realization that, okay, yes, I didn't start this from a business plan stage, but somewhat I can see a good business here for me and the family, I think you've got to go back to planning, because you all know if you fail to prepare or fail to plan, you plan to fail. So planning is something which, comes free to us, but it's at your detriment if you don't execute one. So to answer your question, if I am that individual, when I notice that, when I get that realization that actually there's something here, I've got to get back to planning. Whether I need a business coach or whether I need a friend or whether I start on my own, I've got to think, okay, what's my end goal? What is the vision, right? And it doesn't come to you instantly. And I must say that it's something which it could come to you in several months. But once you have that thought in your mind of, I want to be able to get a vision, somewhat God, the universe, it will come to you. And that's probably all I can say on that. The vision, it will come to you. It's like, you know, when you don't, let's say you don't drive a Toyota, but somebody just purchases a Toyota, all of a sudden, all you see is Toyotas everywhere, because your mind has cultivated the idea of, oh, right, this is what it's focusing on right now. And it's the same way with the vision. Once you have your vision, knowing where you want to go to in the next 10, 15, 20 years, then it's about, okay, what are my non-negotiables? What are the things which, you know, I've got my personal values and I've got the business values. So as a business, what are the things that needs to kind of hold the business in tough times, right? Integrity, customer obsession. These are some of the things which I've seen some of the very large, reputable companies adopt. And sometimes I just think, why have they even got that? But they have that for a reason, because without that, there's no guiding force that allows them to achieve what they want to achieve. But that's just my thoughts on it, by the way, Albert. I just believe it's something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done because if you don't have that and you start growing as a team, as a company, when I join a business, first thing I want to know is what's the vision, what are the values? If you're getting asked by your staff what these are, and you don't have these written down, it's just not a great look on the business. But that's just my thoughts on it. I'm sure others may differ, or others may have other thoughts. Hopefully it helps. Okay. Can I just check if everybody received the link to the Google form? Maybe a thumbs up or something, please.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I've posted it. It's in the chat, please. If you click on that, it should take you into a Google form. Someone said, oh, okay, Dachi, it's can you see it? It's in the chat here. Okay. So I'll just give you guys a couple of minutes just to answer those. And I'm going to bring up the results of one that was done previously, and then we'll move on to the activity piece where we actually get in, specifics. So I'll just give it another maybe minute or so, and then we'll jump back on again. I went off and the link got off. I can't find it. Oh, right. Okay. Let me repost it. I'm just reposting. Okay, so I've reposted. We'll kick off, in 2 minutes. Thank you for everyone that's done it. I really appreciate it. Okay, so let me, whilst everyone's completing that, I'm conscious of time. So let me go straight into the buyer process. Yeah, okay. Yeah, time is not on our side, so I've got to. Okay, thank you for everyone that's done it. I'm going to get back to sharing my screen again, and then we're going to move into kind of the activity, but a few things before the activity. Okay, so bear with me. Where are we? Okay, here you go. Okay. Right, so okay, so slideshow, current slide. Okay, can you all see my screen? Oops. Thumbs up, please, if you can see my screen, or maybe someone give me a a yes, a verbal yes?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So whilst you're completing the survey or the poll, this was one that, you know, I know not that many people responded about, but this is something that I've just captured. We'll take it from, you know, we'll take this from here, and then I can share the results with Gideon and team afterwards. So the question was asked, and as you can see in the survey, what's the biggest challenge facing your team in the area of selling products and services? And unequivocally, 50% said inability of the sales team to meet targets. I'm sure this will change once everybody on this masterclass response will give their feedback. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, is it realistic targets? Is it unrealistic targets? Or is it the way in which these salespeople, or the way in which, as a CEO or founder, you are looking at your sales process? That's one of the things that dawned on me. The other piece is, the other question was, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to sales and revenue growth? Again, you can see on there, not having a clear sales go-to-market plan. 2 people said that, but I can imagine most people do not have this in place. Naturally, it's somewhat an afterthought. Business plan is completed, business is launched. Now, how are we going to go and sell? It should be the other way around. It should be complementary when you're building your business at that time, or when you're building your business plan. Managing opportunities in your pipeline, it's a big thing. It was a challenge for me when I was selling, and I still sell now, making sure that you can manage the opportunities effectively, knowing where to spend your time. And then closing opportunities. This came up in my last session with yourselves when I had the opportunity to speak. And my answer to that was, if you do all the pre-steps correctly, the opportunity will close without any kind of force. It should close because you've done all the pre-steps. And we will look at all the pre-steps very, very shortly. So let's look at the buyer process. So initially I talked about the buyer process and I talked about the seller process. When I started out in sales, I was in the seller process. All I thought about was where I think the opportunity is at or the deal is at. I never thought about my customers and how they're thinking, right? And it's very, very interesting because if you just have this narrow mindset of just you miss so much. And your competition, if they understand the buyer process, then you're going to lose out to competition. So it's very important that the buyer process is understood. But let me share some insights. It's not just me saying it, but let me share CSO Insights conducted research, and CSO Insights are a division of the Miller-Heiman Group. The Miller-Heiman Group are a sales enablement organization. And this was, some insights that came out a couple of years ago. Yes, I know it was a couple of years ago, but it still stands, right? Sellers don't change much. If anything, they've changed a bit because of COVID. But fundamentally, sellers are always going to be sellers, right? They don't change much. So this was entitled The Growing Buyer-Seller Gap Results in 2018. A few things that I'd like to point out. So on the top right, let me explain what it's doing here. You've got these stages when a customer is buying something. They go through a stage. The first stage is they identify they have a need, right? So if I give an example, the last time I bought something, what was it? Let's say a vacuum cleaner, right? The missus was like, Mike, we need a vacuum cleaner. The other one is broken. I said, all right, cool. I didn't budget it, but anyway, it is what it is. We need it. The identification of need was my first thing, or my wife made me realize we had a need. So that's the first stage. And as you can see there, we have 29.8%. Buyers are saying at that point when they think they have a need, they want the salespeople. 29.8% of the buyers that was surveyed said they want salespeople to contact them at that point. Because sometimes as salespeople, we contact them when they're halfway through the decision-making process and our competition is already there. Why is it important? I'll come on to that very shortly. The next stage of the buying process, let me finish that first. So you identify that you have a need. So I identified that I had a need for a vacuum cleaner. I then identified the solutions that were out there. Shark, Dyson, you name it. There's many brands out there. I did that through research. I then looked at the options of, what does Shark give me? What does Dyson give me? That is me evaluating solutions. So that's the third step. And every buyer, whether it's technology, whether it's, agriculture, anything, you go through this stage as a buyer. Whether you're buying trainers, whether you're buying a car, you go through this stage. The fourth step, as you can see there, is resolve concerns. So I went through the stage where, okay, I knew what I wanted. We kind of thought, okay, it's going to be Shark, but now there were some concerns around, insurance, or a few other things that we're concerned about, and we needed our concerns to be put at ease. And then finally, you negotiate, and then you implement, right? So that is the flow of a buyer. That's how they think, and that's how we all think. What this study showed is every buyer, or most buyers, were 29.8% of the buyers surveyed were saying they would like to be contacted at the point when they have the need. As salespeople, how do we even know a buyer has a need and contact them? That's a challenge for us. 26.8% of the people that were surveyed said they would like to be contacted when they've identified the solution. So when they've actually looked at, okay, maybe these are the two vendors that I want to speak to, at that point they want to be contacted, and so on and so forth. You can see the evaluation of options, 24%, resolving consent, 10%, negotiate, yes. It will become relevant very shortly. Let's look at the bottom part. What buyers are asking for. As buyers, they're time starved. And let's not forget, they also go for training. A lot of buyers will go for training just so that they can engage with salespeople. I've always believed in win-win. I'm not that salesperson or that coach that's like, no, make sure you're going to make too much money from this customer. I don't buy that. It's not part of my values. I believe in make sure you can meet the requirement of that customer, make sure you can deliver value to that customer, and make sure that they get a return on investment in the investment that they're going to give you as a vendor. And when they do that, I win and they win. So what are they asking for? They are asking to be understood, right? If you've read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, one of the rules is seek to understand before being understood. Many salespeople, they just talk our customers and not listen. So this is the buyers are saying to us, they want to be understood and they want us to know them. Okay, the second piece, for the salesperson to be able to understand or have good communication skills. What do they mean by that? Listen and ask good questions, not talk at them. So what I'm saying here is your salespeople needs to be trained in a way in which they're able to listen actively and ask relevant questions. Focus on the post-sale. Don't just come in and sell and move on. No, you want to be able to support them after the post-sale, and then give them perspectives. As a buyer, they're doing a lot of research these days. Google, you name it. There's so much sources for information. As a salesperson, you need to go there being credible at your art, but show them the signs of what you're doing. Let them know that you know their industry, you know their challenges, you know what's going on with their competition, and therefore you're coming to them as a thought leader, and you can give them different perspectives. So I just want to share this with you as founders, as CEOs of your businesses, that these are the things which your buyers, and this is across the globe, right, are looking for. The next one, if I can go on to the next one. The growing buyer sell gap. Okay, so 90% of the of the buyers want to engage with sellers early. So if you look at the previous slide, where it said 29.8%, at that stage, the majority wants to engage early anyway. So this means as salespeople, we always need to be prospecting. If you have a sales team, they need to find reasons to call customers. They always have to be proactive and not wait for the customers to call them. The other piece is, yes, what I found interesting was all 10.4% said all vendors are equal, and 57% said only a little better than others. What does that mean to you as a founder, as a CEO? What that means is you need to make it very, very, very clear to your customers or your potential customers how your solution differs to the other. Because if you don't, they can't make that distinction. So as a salesperson, you got to make sure that there's a clear distinction between how we do it and how we do it differently. So these are some of the insights I wanted to share with you. Now let's move on to the buyer circle. So we're now getting into the task, and conscious of time, so I'm gonna speed through this a bit. So the buyer circle is effectively what I've already talked about, right? And this is another methodology. So if you think about, it starts with recognition of needs, right? So this is if you look at the circle on the right-hand side, every buyer would recognize they have a need. And I know I've already talked about it, but this is the cycle of that. They would evaluate options. They would want you to resolve their concerns, and then they make a decision. Once they make a decision, they expect the solution to be implemented. And implemented is if it's a service, it could be delivered. It doesn't have to be implemented. If it's software, obviously implementation. If it's service, it needs to be done. The service has to be actioned, and then changes over time. Many times we forget about the changes over time, because guess what? There's something called land and expand. You get in the door of your customer. It could be a very small deal revenue-wise, but the growth potential is significant. The only way you can realize that is if you are able to stay close to the account, provide them that post-service, as you saw what the buyers were asking for from the previous slide. And then as you do that, you stay close to that account or that customer, you get to realize other areas where you can support them and therefore help them grow, and you can grow, in doing so. And again, this is applicable to every business, not just technology or retail or trade. So this is the buyer circle. Okay, now let me talk about the sales process. So this is the bit where there's going to be an activity, and looking at the time, the activity may have to be maybe 10 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's look at the sales process. Okay, it's a bit of a busy slide, but let me explain what this means, and I'll talk through that shortly. On the right-hand side is the salesperson, right? So, in your team, you may have different salespeople, you may have VPs of sales, you may have sales leaders, or you may be the salesperson for your own business, if it's a small business. Now, when I talk about a sales go-to-market or a sales ecosystem, this is an example of an ecosystem for a technology business. And let me be very specific here. It's a technology business. It doesn't mean that if you're in trade, or if you're in agriculture, or if you're in retail, you can't have something similar. It's just a blueprint, and some of those areas can be changed and modified for your business. The salesperson is the core and center of. The salesperson needs to see themselves, he or she, as the CEO of their business. When I was in sales, I'm the CEO of my business. So I need to think about, what is the team that's going to support me? Okay, let's look at it. The team that was supporting me is my solutions consultant. Who are they? They're the people who would showcase the technology to my customers, or my customer to be. I can't work without them, and they can't work without me. So guess what? We work in tandem. Professional services, when the solution is sold, they need to implement it. I need them and they need me. Regional director, they were my coach. That's my boss. That's my VP, right? It could be a CEO. Maybe you're the CEO of your business or the founder, and maybe your salespeople report into you. That could be you in that slot where it says regional director. But let's not forget about the unsung heroes. So when I talk about ecosystem, you have got insights. Guess what? Insights could be somebody who works in your product team. It doesn't have to be, it could be somebody who it's not usually recognized, but they're still part of the ecosystem in the go-to-market. You know, your company execs, your product team, your vertical. So I think you get a concept. You need to build something like this for your business where you have the salesperson in the core and everyone else that's supporting the salesperson in and around it. Marketing, customer success. I know it's not here, but they're all included. So that is effectively, I guess, the concept for building your go-to-market. So now let's focus on the salesperson, because what I kept hearing was, you know, salespeople are thinking the targets are too high, they're struggling with their targets. If you're a salesperson or a CEO and you're still a salesperson, like a player manager, there are some things that we can do, that you can do to help you close the deal. Because what you want to be able to do is to make sure that at every given point in this cycle, if I go back a second, at every given point, you're doing something. So we're going to focus on the recognition of needs, right? So today we're focusing on, imagine, you know, somebody made an inquiry that they're interested in your business or your solution. It does not matter what the solution is, but they're interested. Imagine you're having your first meeting with them. This meeting is probably the most important meeting in the stages that you looked at earlier. Why? Because if you do a great job here, everything feeds back to the notes that you're going to gather at this stage. So generally what I do, and what a lot of businesses that I coach, what they tend to do is, we call it discovery phase. Okay, so you're going there to learn about the customer's business, their pain points. Look at the top right. In your notepad or your book, have 4 sections. And those 4 sections, the first section, the first quadrant, as you can see top left, we call it before scenarios and negative consequences. And then the next one, you've got after scenarios, then you got required capabilities, and you got how you do it. Okay, so let me explain. And again, I know I've said a lot, but this is vital. If you get this right and the next bit right, you're making your closure stage very, very easy. When you're doing your discovery, the first thing you need to do after you've done your introductions and pleasantries is, and again, sticking to seek to understand before being understood, is find out how are they doing things right now. So, Mr. Customer, you mentioned, your current process of is quite tedious or quite painful. Can you tell me more about it? And then you just shut up and listen. There's something called SUAL. I'm somebody who likes acronyms. You're probably gathering. SUAL means SUAL. S means shut up, and listen. The minute you ask the question, listen. What salespeople do, and it is a bane of them, is they ask the question and then they're nervous. So then they just rattle on again. No, ask the question, be confident and keep quiet. Guess what? The customer will start talking, or the potential customer will start talking. What you're trying to do is to say, okay, this is how you're doing things right now. Clearly, how you're doing things right now is not working for you. And because if it was working for you, you will not be talking to us. When you've established that, and of course, you're going to want to know more about how they're doing it, but the key part is, what is the negative consequences? What do I mean by that? The negative consequences is the way you're doing things is impacting you in terms of time, money, emotion, but there's a way that it's affecting you as an individual, or it's affecting the business. You want to be able to uncover that, because that is what's going to allow you to link your business value proposition to the customer's pain. So I can't emphasize enough, don't just talk about, because generally salespeople, we don't dig in enough, because guess what? We're either nervous, we're unqualified, we haven't earned the trust, and therefore we can't ask those difficult questions. Again, I'm under no illusions that it may take 2 or 3 conversations to get to the negative consequences, but ask in your first call anyway. So, Mr. Customer, you mentioned, so I understand that you know, your current process is taking a very long time. What is the impact to you as a business? Be shocked when you listen. Oh, really? Okay. In what way? Who's been impacted the most? What team has been impacted the most? And all these times you're making notes in that box in your notepad. Okay, so if you don't have this solution in place, what does it mean to you as an individual? That's me as a person, because it may be that if I don't get something right, I'll get a sack. That's important. Or as a business, if we don't get it right, our share price is going to plummet, or we're going to get out of business. You want to understand individual pain and the business pain. Okay, so that's the first quadrant. Make sure you get as many negative consequences of them not having the right solution in place as possible. Then you move on to the second quadrant, top right. Okay, so Mr. Customer, we've understood that this is how you do things right now. We understand the impact to the business. Clearly, it's quite impactful. Would you agree? Yes, no, get their buy-in. The after scenarios. Okay, so where do you want to get to, Mr. Customer, in the next, actually, the best way to ask this question, which works all the time, is, Mr. Customer, imagine a year from now, you've got the right solution in place, you know, everything is working perfectly well. Where do you want to get to? Where do you see yourself? Right, you're getting them to feel, you know, because everything is done emotionally, but we shouldn't forget that. So tap into the emotions. They will tell you, oh, with the right solution, I can see my team working effectively. We're saving 5 hours a week. Those 5 hours can go on to more strategic tasks, blah, 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 blah. So already they've seen the benefits of having a solution in place and what they can do with that additional time. Okay, fantastic. How will that impact the business positively? Oh yeah, as a business, you know, if we have this in place, we can grow by 10% in the next year or 2. Okay, but what does that mean in terms of revenue if you grow by 10%? Well, you know, it could be another $50,000 or city or pounds to our revenue. Okay, that is magical, because what you've done there is you have got a return on investment after a year or 2, and therefore, when you get to the pricing stage, and they're saying to you, your solution is expensive, you're saying to them, but Mr. Customer, you remember when we spoke, you talked about the fact that if you get the right solution in place, you're going to gain an additional 50K revenue in 2 years. We're only asking you for 10% of that, but you're going to gain 10 times that. Is that not a good business case? Now, obviously, you're not going to say it in those words, but what you're doing here is you're making sure that the person you're speaking to understands that you know business. Okay, so I think you get the concept. The first quadrant is important. I can't stress how important that is. The second quadrant is even more important, because that's where it justifies the pricing of your solution. Okay, the bottom left is what we call the required capabilities in the metrics. And I'm going to try and simplify that. The required capabilities, and again, I should mention that, I think, was it, I forgot the name, was Albert or somebody that asked the question around the methodology. This is one of the methodologies, right, of discovery, is what we call it. When you're getting information from your customers, it's a methodology. So you kind of, you know, when you keep doing it, it becomes second nature. And you can even literally do it without, you know, thinking about the question, because you follow the pattern. Before, negative; after, positive outcomes; and now required capabilities. Required capabilities is basically you saying, Mr. Customer, I've heard all that you've just said, but tell me, what do you think you need from a solution? Because guess what? As you saw from the insights from CSO, they would have done some research. They would have known who you are as a company before they contacted you. And if you contacted them, they may or may not know who you are, but they will know from an industry or a solution perspective, the capabilities they need are A, B, C, D. oh, I need a solution to have a contact center function or a support team or whatever it may be. Whatever you're selling, you need to know what your capabilities are. And we're going to come on to that shortly. Once they tell you what the required capabilities are, you make a note of it. Because guess what? What you want to be able to do is to see whether any of your features and functions is aligned to what they're asking for. Metrics. Metrics are headline statements. Things like, we want to grow by 5%, or to my previous example, in 2 years' time, we want to add an additional $50,000 to our revenue. That's a metric. So every proposal you send to them, every presentation you do to them, every correspondence you're having with them, you always make sure that you're honing in on the metric. Mr. Customer, let's remember why we're doing this. You want to grow by X%, and therefore this is how we can help you do it. You recap every single time. And then the final quadrant, which is the bottom right, the HWDI, and sorry about the acronyms, but it's just easy to fit it into that box, means how you do it better, right? That's effectively what it means, or how you do it differently. And then the proof points. So why is that important? It's important because I talked about the differentiation in one of the previous slides. I think it was a certain percentage we're looking at, the vendors the same, but you're not the same. The reason why you're in business and the reason why somebody else is in business, it could be similar solutions, but you provide something different to what they're providing. So you need to make sure that that comes through to your customers. This is how I'm different. Let me tell you how I'm different to this other customer or this other company. So, and then of course, the final piece, the proof points. Okay, so you're telling, the customer may say to you, okay, so, hey, Albert, so you're saying to me that this is how you're different. Okay, that's great. Where have you done it? Can you prove to me? Now, at this point, you need to remember case studies, use cases. Oh yeah, no worries, Mr. Customer. I recently worked with John Bloggs. John Bloggs were in a similar situation to you. This is how we helped them. This is what their business outcome was when we helped them. Done. Very, very snappy, very short, confidently delivered. Now, if you can follow this process or this methodology, I promise you, when you get to that closure stage, because you have this information, because you know what business outcomes they're trying to achieve, the pain points, like what's keeping them up at night, what they're expecting from a solution, you can then align your solution to what they're looking for. So I've entitled this call notes, because whenever you're on a call or in a meeting, make sure you've got these 4 quadrants. And when you're making the notes and asking questions, make sure the questions are pertinent to those 4 quadrants. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'll quickly run through. So if you remember the cycle that we looked at, right? The buyer cycle. The recognition of needs stage was the first stage. And I gave an example of me buying or wanting to procure a vacuum cleaner, where the first stage was my wife saying to me, Mike, we need a vacuum cleaner. Our one is broken. Now, without kind of confusing you too much, every stage that the buyer goes through, there are tick boxes that you need to do. So as a salesperson, I need to know, where is my buyer? My buyer is at the initial stage. Okay, have I done all these things? Because if I haven't done all these things, it's going to affect me when I get to closure. But if I can do all these things now, I'm confident that I've got a solid business case as we move through the process. So let's look at some of the things that you need at this stage, at this first stage. You need to identify and build a champion. Who's a champion? A champion is somebody who works within the company that you're trying to sell your solution to or your services to. That champion could be somebody who believes in your product, likes what you're offering, and basically when you're not in the room, they can speak and advocate your solution for you. It takes time to build a champion. right? You got to understand what's in it for them. Why are they supporting you or your product? But over time, you can build champions. And again, building champions is a whole different module that we can talk about. But building champions, I have lost a number of deals in the past because I didn't have effective champions. I have won many deals in the past because I had excellent champions. I can't emphasize how important champions are to build to winning some of your deals that you're selling. A coach. So you may be asking, what's the difference between a coach and a champion? A coach is somebody who can just guide you. Mike, I think you should talk to this person in this company. Yeah, Vodafone Ghana. I know this person who works there. I think, yeah, I don't know much about what they're doing, but I think you need to talk to him. Okay, let me give you the name. And then when you get talking to that person that your coach directs you to, when you're stuck and you need information, maybe your champion is not around, your coach is the one that you can go back and say, hey, Kwame, look, I'm struggling with this person. Can you tell me what's going on in the business? He'll coach you. So you always need a coach and a champion. Okay, very quickly, build personal relationships. Again, need I say it more? Understand business drivers. This is the qualification piece. Understanding why are they talking to you? There's a reason why they're talking to you. And usually, very important point, there's usually a business driver and a technical driver if you're selling a technical solution. A business driver would come from the CEO, CRO, or somebody from the C-suite who will say, we need to grow we need to reduce risk, or whatever it may be. We need to improve our brand. The technical driver could be, we have the solution in place, but it's not working, right? If you're in, let's say retail, the business driver could be, yeah, we want to reduce our costs and therefore we want a better price. The technical driver could be, the solution that we use to procure our clothes or whatever it is that you're selling, it's not right, and we need a vendor that will give us a better platform or a CRM, whatever it may be. But it's always going to be a business driver and a technical driver. And then if there are any kind of third parties involved, make sure you align with them as well, because you want to make sure that there's kind of that cohesion. Always showcase your products. And again, I know many of you will do that. Whether it's over Zoom, Teams, or in person, let them know, what is it that they're going to buy. And the final one, but not the least, is for you to focus on the business value. And I call that return on investment. So the business value is the example that I gave before. Oh, so you want to grow your revenue by up to $50,000 in the next 2 years. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, we believe we can help you do that through ABCD, because what you're doing is you're aligning your solution to the requirements. Okay, so the final piece I was going to talk about before we jump onto the activity, and I'm not sure if we have enough time for that, but I'm going to pause for questions, is this piece here. Okay, so if you think about the qualification, right, and let me go back, because it's important that you understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so where is it? The changeable time qualification. Yes, here. So if you look the top right, positive business outcomes, always make sure you understand that. Required capabilities, make sure you understand that. Now, once you have this, because remember you've done this qualification already. So now when you're kind of responding back to what you can do for them, right? So you've gathered all the information. Okay, you understand the pain points, the business drivers, the positive business outcomes, what they're looking for in a solution. So now it's your time to show them something, right? So in that demo, how we do it, and generally how I advise customers to do it, in the demo, the first part of the demo is you play back what you've heard. So you have a nice, clean template that says, Mr. Customer, based on our first conversation or our last few conversations, your current business pain is this or these. This is how it's affecting you as an individual or as a business. So that you've done the negative consequences bit. This is what you're expecting to get to in the next year or two. This is where you want to get to. If you get to that place, this is what it's going to mean to you and the business. That's business outcome, top left. Now, what you're now doing here is you're now taking the business outcome. So for this example, let's say the customer said to you that I want to increase my sales. They may give you a figure by 5 times, by 2 times. But for this example, I kept it simple. I want to increase my sales. Okay. What you then need to do in your playback slide to them is look at your offering. And if you're selling a software or a hardware or a technology or whatever you're selling, what parts or what feature or functionality of your solution is going to address the pain point that they're having and would help them lead to increased sales. So let me give you this example. The vendor here that for this scenario is a company who collects feedback, right? And they use the feedback to improve business outcomes. When I spoke with the potential customer to be, their positive business outcome was they wanted to increase sales. Okay, great. But I had to show them that this is the feature or the functionality within the software that I'm selling that would allow you to increase your sales. The question to them is, okay, so how? Tell me, how do you do it? Well, Mr. Customer, we have something called early warning system. So you can see down the bottom where it says example, the customer pain point is retention, right? Because for them to increase sales, they need to sell more and they need to make sure that they're not losing customers. Okay, so how do they do it? Or how they do it with us? At that time, what I was selling had so many different functions or features. But one of the ones that I picked out that addressed that retention issue was something called early warning system. The early warning system was effectively, you know, if you think about some of the accounts or some of their customers were quiet. They weren't telling them anything. And if you know, somebody that does not say anything to you can end up leaving without you even knowing, because you don't know whether they're happy or dissatisfied. But what this allowed them to do, the early warning system, was a feature that allowed them to then know that, okay, these 20 accounts haven't spoken to us in a year. They might churn. So let me use this early warning system to ensure that I can talk to them and therefore I can understand if they're happy or dissatisfied. And if they're dissatisfied, I've got to make sure that I improve the service so they can stay with me longer. Okay, so my ask of you, and I don't think there's enough time for the group activity, but I'll tell you what the activity is and you can do it in your own time, is you need to look at all your features or your functions in your business, in your value proposition, in your solution. And for each function, ask yourself the question, so what to your customer? So what? One, if you're able to answer the so what, it would align to a business objective. So what I did here was the early warning system. So what? Well, it allows you to shine a spotlight on accounts that are not speaking to you. So what? So that you can contact them and make sure that they're happy. So what? So it leads to you making sure that the customers are happy and therefore you increase your retention, which would increase your growth as a company. Very, very simple. And you can do this for every single feature. What does that mean? As a salesperson, when I join your organization and I'm selling and I'm presenting back to a customer, I literally pick those, look at it as, those items, but I'm looking for like a jigsaw. Pick one of them, right? Okay, this one here, this is what it means to the customer, and this is how it's going to help the customer achieve their business outcome. This other one. So it's so easy as a salesperson. And what it does is, to the buyers are thinking, oh, I can make the connection now, because before I didn't make the connection. You're telling me about all these features, but I didn't know what it means. Now I get it. This feature of yours, and guess what? If you're doing this and your competition is not doing this, guess who's going to get more brownie points with your customers? It's you, because your customer is going to see that you're bringing perspectives. And if you remember when we looked at the CSO Insights reports, there was one comment that says the customers want the salespeople to bring different perspectives. Customers can't do this on their own. We have to do that for them. I'm going to pause there. The group activity was really, we're going to divide you into teams, and there was going to be a team lead, and the team lead was going, and you were going to discuss within your respective businesses, talk about the functionality in your solutions or whatever you're offering, and what it means to the customer and how it would help the customer, achieve their objectives. But given it's only 30 minutes to go, I don't think there's enough time. So I think I'm happy to share this with Gideon. Gideon will share it with the rest of everybody on this call. And I implore you to do this on your own or with your team, because it's going to help you massively. But I want to pause there. I've spoken a lot. You've listened quietly a lot. So please, I think we've got 13 minutes. Happy for you to ask me any questions or challenge or share any feedback, but I'm going to pause there. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing those insights. If you have a question to ask, please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your virtual hand and call you. Or if you, I saw a hand. Okay. And if you can't speak where you are, you can also type the question and I will read it out to Michael for feedback. If you don't have a question too, okay, Rahel.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. I have a question on the buyer cycle.
Yes.
Okay. Which one is the critical point when you are thinking about the buyer cycle?
Yeah, for me, I mean, they're all critical, but the section where you need to spend a lot of time is the recognition of needs phase, the first one here. So that is where you are getting to understand the customer. What is it they need? How can you help them? What's their pain point? What if they do nothing? When do they need the solution by? Have they got money to even buy this? Who's the budget holder? These are the section where a lot of the questions are asked. Because if you don't ask those questions and you get to a decision phase, right, you don't have enough information to be able to justify your value, you're gonna be in dire trouble.
Okay. So and then second question is in the same place. How do you know that the buyers are interested, like they are just on way to buy from you? Like which one is an indicator for you to say this buyer may buy from me?
Such a wonderful question, and I wish I had that magic wand. It's something which as salespeople we struggle with, and we always think. But I mean, in answer to your question, the things that I've done and I've seen many people do in the past is, first and foremost, you've got to test them, right? You got to find somebody who you can build into a champion, and then you got to test them. For example, give them a task. I need this information from you. Can you get it back to me by Friday? See if they do it. If they don't do it, that's kind of one question mark, right? It's like a potential concern. Are they responsive on email, or when you call them, they'll call you back? Do they pick up your phone calls? Because at the early stages, what you're trying to build is a profile of what is the seriousness of this conversation. Because guess what? If I need something, and there's I need to get it by a certain point in time, and that potential vendor that I called rings me, and I miss it, I'm going to call them back, because guess what? I need them to tell me stuff that I don't know. But and there are many times where people have reached out to me, I'm not interested in, I'm not going to reply. So you got to test them at the initial phases. But the bit where you can really feel that they're going to buy is once you start understanding who's going to sign the check or who's going to sign the contract. Because what you want to be able to do is speak to that person, call it the budget holder, call it the economic buyer, call it the who hold the purse strings. Because if you're not speaking to them, they may have different desires and different requirements to the person that you're speaking to. And guess what? If I'm writing the checks and you're not appeasing to what I need, then you're probably just speaking to the wrong person. So again, make sure you always work your way up into, and if you have the opportunity to speak to the main person who's signing the checks, I'm confident that I'm going to get the deal or I'm not going to get the deal, because they will tell you, we're going to buy or we're not going to buy. And you can always kind of hold them accountable. So yeah, test them, make sure they put you in contact with whoever, signs the checks. Make sure there's correspondence and they're also responding to you and not just one way. It should be two-way traffic. And most of the time, when you've done it many times, you get a discernment to say, okay, I feel this one there's a deal here. Let me spend my time there. It'll come with time. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. We have also Naomi saying that also most interested persons will keep asking questions or probing further to know more about your solution. So I think that's an addition.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So now, Dachine, you have a question?
Yes. Thank you for the insights. I want to ask, how do you measure your metrics at the early stage where the progress is not much? Like, how do you measure those metrics that you're going to you will try to improve on?
Yeah, I think I always look at it as, what are your business drivers, right? So it depends on the business that you're in. It could be you're measuring growth, or you're measuring how many customers you're bringing on board, but you can keep it simplistic to start with. And then over time, if it's your first year of business, it could be maybe making sure that in my first 3 months, I have an event, or in the first 3 months, I contact 50 potential customers, right? Or in my first year, I've employed 2 salespeople. So it really depends on your business drivers or your value drivers. And those value drivers could be linked to people. It could be linked to... Oh, sorry. It could be linked to revenue. But once you identify your value drivers, then based on those value drivers, you can then measure those, right? So if it's, I want to grow my team by 10%, okay, in the first year, I want to grow by 2%, so on and so forth. Hopefully that helps.
The basket in the more.
Gideon, your microphone is on.
Sorry, I hopefully answered the question for you, but yeah, it's kind of the incremental measurement based on what makes your business tick. Is it revenue? Is it number of customers? Is it your brand? Is it your people? You got to identify them from the start, and I'm sure you'd have done that as part of your business planning. And then based on your business drivers, your measurement would be, how am I doing against those drivers? And you could be ambitious, or you could be realistic with your measures. If you want to push yourself, then set ambitious goals that measures your business drivers. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it helps. And my last question, like, you touched on, like, your wife was supporting. I think you touched something about vacuum cleaner. Like, what is that vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, so my wife and I need to get like a Hoover, and is that what you mean? Yeah, that example.
I thought it's one of the methodology. Or
oh no, it's like we say Hoover, but Hoover is actually a brand name, just like Dyson or just like Shark. So I moved away from saying Hoover to vacuum cleaners, because that's the overarching name. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank
you. For the methodologies, if you want to contact me separately or go through Gideon, I can point you in different directions where there's different methodologies, and then you can pick one that's relative for your business and then become a specialist at it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. In case anybody wants to connect, and yeah, I didn't talk about this, but I'll leave you guys with this one. We talked a lot about different things today. I think, again, I implore you to put these tasks in different kind of quadrants. If you don't know about the Eisenhower matrix, just Google it. And all it is we're all busy, but how do you become more efficient? So what you do is, again, 4 quadrants. You got urgent, not important, important. Top left are things you want to do now. So maybe some of the things that you have taken from today's session, you want to implement straight away. Put it in the do bit. Quadrant number 2. This is where it's important, but it's not urgent. So if you don't do it by tomorrow or by next week, nothing happens. Schedule it in your own time. And then bottom 3 quadrant is delegate, right? It's urgent, but it's not important. So delegate it and get someone else to do it for you. And then finally, if it's not urgent and it's not important, eliminate it, right? Don't spend time on it. So if you Google Eisenhower matrix, it'll come up, something that's useful to give you more time. But yeah, that's it for me, Gideon. If there are no questions, feel free to connect with you guys. I'll talk to Gideon. There's an event that we're organizing, and Gideon will be speaking at as well in April of next year in Ghana. I'd love to have all of you there. I'll give Hyperspace free of charge tickets, early bird tickets. But yeah, connect with me and I'll be more than happy to support.
Michael, thank you so much. I'm sure that yeah. Naomi, your question again?
I'm asking if he's looking for mentees. I would love to be a mentee.
Yeah, I mean, let's connect offline, Naomi. Yeah, let's connect offline. I'm always giving back. Happy to support. Yeah, please.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, Naomi, I can send an email to introduce you so that you can connect. Thank you so much, Michael. I think Ellie put it in the group, says that great presentation. Thank you. All of you who participated, it's been very lovely having you around. And I think that we have a lot to implement. All of us going back to the drawing board, reviewing our sales strategy. And I like the point where we need to also bring in our staff to also understand the direction so that we can all move them around. Emmanuel, it was great having you around. He says great presentation. Florence says this was a great session. Yeah, so we hope that you all be joining us when we invite you to join the next session. Somebody is already saying that you also want to join Naomi and become a mentee. So Michael, I guess you are going to have a lot of mentees to work with very soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Emmanuel Atakwa is requesting for Michael's email. All right, we'll send you the assignment that he said that he's going to give it to us to email to you. We'll add his email to it so that you can all connect with him. Michael is also on LinkedIn as well, so please feel free to connect with him. Michael, I don't know if you can just drop your LinkedIn address in the chat so that people can freely connect with you and then chat you there. Before we go, this is how we do it. Irene also said that insightful presentation. Thank you for joining us, Irene. For those of you that can put on your videos, we want to take a family photo. That's how we do it. So if you can put on your video, we'll take a quick picture. Great, great, great. I'm seeing the faces. Please come out. So I'm going to count down from 5. So Michael has already dropped his LinkedIn address, so you can click on it and connect with him. So 5, 4, 3. Mustafa, you've been turned upside down. I don't want your blood to flow into your head. So 3, 2, give me a smile. Give me a smile. I take as many as I can. Smile,
That's
smile. Keep smiling. Yeah, I've taken plenty. So it was great having all of you to come. I hope that you have a lot to implement from now. And please join us anytime we'll invite you to join another session. Michael, great having you. Always
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
sir.
listening to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And thank you for everybody being on today. Have a good session. Have a good, successful businesses. Speak to you later.
Right. And then it will continue to be on YouTube. So anyone that also wants to refer, go to our YouTube channel, Hyperspace, and you'll have the full session there. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.